Most celebrities, whether historical or current, are invested in some type of hobby or occupation that they partake in outside of what they're actually known for. For some, it's juggling or sketch comedy, but surprisingly enough, there are a handful of celebrities that have taken up a camera over their career and produced really great, interesting results. I made a video a couple weeks ago about this exact topic, and you guys really enjoyed it, so I compiled another list and made another one. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up is Jessica Lange. Known for her role as Dawn in the 1976 film King Kong: An American Horror Story, Jessica Lange is a legendary historical actress. Born in Minnesota in the 1950s, she would go on to study art and photography at the University of Minnesota, which was the catalyst for her career in art and filmmaking. After meeting her future husband and traveling around the States, the two would land in France, where Lange would begin her interest in acting. Quickly, she was thrust into Hollywood acting in a variety of different films, displaying just how great she truly was at it. In the 1990s, she remembered her love for photography after gifted a Leica M6, which she would use to capture and create up to 5 photo books. While the photo books cover a variety of different topics and locations, there is a common theme throughout her documentary and lifestyle-based work, and in my opinion, it's being able to capture small, minute details in a very specific moment in time. In hindsight, it is unsurprising to me that many great historical actors end up making great photographers. Both mediums require great attention to detail in their craft and take hundreds of hours of repetition to potentially find results that you're satisfied with. Jessica Lange is certainly no exception to that, and a great person to start off the list. Next up is Dennis Hopper. Hopper grew up in Kansas to a farming family in the 1940s, but was cut of a different cloth, made for achieving many great things in filmmaking, activism, and photography. Known most famously for his roles in Easy Rider, Blue Velvet, and Apocalypse Now, he photographed for many bands and magazines while developing his own style. He first got introduced to a camera when interning at a theater in San Diego, where his boss had an interior design business. They would take photos of the furniture and props created for the theater, slowly gaining knowledge with cameras. Once an adult, his first wife would gift him a Nikon F camera, who would be the driving force, along with James Dean, for him to really pursue photography. Now, most of his work was created between 1961 and 1967, which was when he was most active as a photographer, and interestingly enough, many of these would be used as a mood board for his movie he stars in, Easy Rider, which is pretty cool to think of his early work really laying the groundwork for his filmmaking and acting later in his career. Much of his photography illustrates that time period well, showing intimate and unique looks into the 1960s. Sadly, there isn't much documentation by him after that time period, which is too bad. I think seeing time slowly morph our society from fashion, architecture, vehicles, etc., Hopper's work would have been an interesting glance through some of the most interesting periods of time, in my opinion. That being said, despite his relatively short stint shooting photos seriously, I think just like Jessica Lange, Hopper is incredible at capturing a fleeting moment, however spontaneous it may be. Third on the list is Jason Momoa. Now, taking a step away from historical actors, Momoa, known most for his role in Aquaman and Game of Thrones, is a big camera and specifically Leica fanboy. On his own channel, you can see clips of him using a good variety of cameras and even shooting film on a Leica M3. While I couldn't actually find any of his work, it could be that he takes photos for himself personally. Selfishly, I hope that he shares some of the images in the future, as I would love to see some of the flicks from his lavish lifestyle. Next up is Winona Ryder. Ryder, who is most famously known for her role in Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, and more recently Stranger Things, was born in Winona County, Minnesota in 1971. She was born to 2 authors, so her love for storytelling was baked into her from a young age. Despite starring in Beetlejuice at an early age, she still struggled with bullying, even stating that after the movie, she was frequently called a witch by her classmates. Ryder would go on to have a very successful acting career and really has had a second wind with her role in Stranger Things. In 2020, during the Super Bowl, a Squarespace ad would run depicting her wandering her hometown with a Leica, capturing images of her childhood, nostalgia, and everything in between.
You could sell these, you know. come on, you're just silly.
No, really, I'd buy one. Lots of people would.
I don't know. Maybe I'll make a photo book someday.
The photos have then been used in a photo essay and website about Winona, Minnesota. I think it's a really cool, unique project that is super relatable to me personally. Having come from a relatively small town in Wisconsin, it's cool to see images that I resonate with and appear to be mundane images of middle America, but show such a unique slice of life for many people in a specific regional area. Safe to say, Winona Ryder is certainly a talented photographer and curator, and I hope that she continues to come out with more photo projects in the future. Fifth on the list is Leonard Nimoy. In 1931, Nimoy, most famously known for his role as Spock in Star Trek, was born to Jewish parents in Boston, Massachusetts. He began acting when he was 8 in a children's and neighborhood theater and started taking up photography and using cameras when he was 10. By the time he was 20, he was acting in small B movies as minor roles and continued for more than a decade until he landed in his most iconic character, Mr. Spock. Although his early life, he was taking images of whatever he saw in many different cities, it wasn't until the 70s when he got his work featured in a gallery. As in many things, it takes time to develop your own personal style and get your name on the map. Even in Nimoy's case, he was shooting for nearly 30 years before getting a, quote, official recognition. Nimoy, unlike many of the other artists that I've talked about so far, took lots of studio or stage shots with the idea of sparking social change. One campaign I'm thinking of specifically challenges body expectations in women put on by society. I think Nimoy was ahead of his time when it comes to using photography in a progressive sense to spark some sort of change or conversation, and would be interesting to see how he would tackle some of today's issues in his photography. Next up is Andy Summers. Summers, most famously known as the Police's guitarist, was born in Lancashire, England in 1942. At an early age, he would pick up music and begin playing in pubs at the age of 16. After primary school, he would bounce around in different bands, and then would eventually study classical guitar at California State University before returning to London. In 1977, he would join the Police, who were getting huge in London's punk scene at that time. Throughout his career with the Police, he shot tons of photos of their travels. Summers has stated that photography to him is sort of a cathartic experience. When he's playing in the band, there's only so much he can control, versus when he's out taking photographs himself. He controls what he shoots, how it's presented, etc. That can be seen in his photos. Despite having such an easy subject to shoot all the time, his own band, he manages to have a unique perspective on mundane and normal things. I truly think that if Andy Summers would have leaned more into photography from a professional perspective, he could have made a well-bodied career in it as well, outside of just being a musician. Seventh on the list is Jeff Garlin. Most famous for The Goldbergs, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Toy Story 3, Garlin was born to a middle-class family in Chicago. He would go on to study film and began doing stand-up comedy. Through his comedy, he began working on film and television and found quite a knack for himself in the industry. Over time, by making friends in the industry and being around and learning cameras, he started to get an interest in photography. Garlin says, "As an actor, filmmaker, and comedian, I often find myself interacting with people in truly unique ways. The very nature of my job means I'm able to see people how no one else sees them, whether it be my co-stars in downtime on set, talk show hosts while I sit in their interview, and comedians who I gig with. At some point, I started trying to capture this unique perspective with my camera. Now, the only thing I do seriously besides comedy is take pictures." Next up is Seal. Famously known for his song Kiss from a Rose, the globally renowned singer and songwriter is also a photographer. The Grammy-winning singer has partnered with Leica recently to offer a special edition of the manufacturer's Q2 Dawn camera that draws inspiration from the golden glow of sunrise while celebrating the uniquely human connection in the art of making a photograph, according to a press release. Offered in a limited 500-unit run, the instruments are hand-wrapped in a Japanese woven fabric meant to recall the dappled effect of sunlight falling through canopy. Each is also engraved with Seal's signature. From what I can find from my research, it looks like most of his work has been almost entirely made with the intention of being put in galleries, so there wasn't much online. I'm definitely interested to see if he'll release any photos he's created, especially with this special edition camera. And last on the list, and potentially the most interesting, is James Dean. Does James Dean really need an introduction? Perhaps one of the most famous actors of all time, this rebel without a cause was born in Indiana in 1931. Despite a hectic childhood, he would eventually go on to study acting at UCLA in California. Initially, Dean would only land smaller commercial roles, but between 1950 and 1955, Dean would gain notoriety in his roles for being a handsome, young, suave man. In 1954, Dean became interested in developing a career in motorsport and started racing. He won his first 2 competitions and had aspirations to compete in the Indianapolis 500 despite his busy schedule. Despite all this and rising to huge amounts of fame, sadly in 1955, Dean would be a part of an automotive accident that he would not walk away from. Now, at some point before Dean had passed, it was said that he had entered a portrait competition, so he at some point was learning how to take photographs. In fact, there is a book produced by Charles P. Quinn showcasing some of his earliest work, which is all just rough drafts of photos, but interesting to think that James Dean, had he not passed away, could certainly be a very talented photographer, director, and filmmaker today. Alright, I think that's going to wrap it up for this one. If there's any artists that you think I missed, make sure to drop them down in the comments below. Otherwise, check out the previous video and see if I covered them in that video there. Additionally, which of the photographers' work in this video did you most resonate with? I'd be really interested to hear down in the comments below. While doing the research for this video, I was honestly blown away at pretty much every photographer's different take on photography and how they kind of have a different style and point of view to the medium that I truly think is unique. Otherwise, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more stuff coming soon. It's getting a lot nicer out here in Wisconsin, so I'm excited to get some more outside photo walks for you guys, showcasing some cameras and some of my own work. So until then, stay tuned, subscribe, make sure you like the video if you did like it, and until next time, peace out, stay safe.